You do not wake because you are not quite asleep. No one is the first night. But somewhere in the long, cold middle of it, the room arrives around you all at once, and you understand the bargain you made at the gate. You are going to be kept alive tonight by people who will never once learn your name. That is the whole of it. 40 beds in a long, dark room, 40 women breathing the shallow breath of the sick, and to every one of them, you are not Martha, not the charwoman who scrubbed other people's floors for 20 years until her legs gave out in the street. You are the card tied to the iron foot of the bed. Bed 11, fever, charity, a number, a complaint, and the word that means no one is paying. They will feed you and warm you and watch you through the dark, and they will never once ask who you are, because a place like this has no time to learn the names of the people it saves. The smell tells you where you are. Carbolic and wet stone, and too many people breathing the same cold air in the same closed room. A smell you will never afterward be able to describe to anyone who was not here. Somewhere down the ward, the matron's keys. Not coming, not going, only there. The only clock the ward keeps. Your hand is closed around something small. You do not open it. A child's mitten, knitted, too small now for any hand but the one it was made for. It is not warm. You tell yourself it is warm. You tell yourself there is still a small hand inside it. This, you have learned, is a thing a person can get very good at. And somewhere in the long room, you cannot see which, the lamp is too low, there is one bed that is made and empty and waiting. There was a woman in it this morning. The nurses do not say where she has gone. You will learn, before the night is over, what the drawn curtain means. But not yet. For now, there is only the dark, the breathing, the small, cold mitten in your fist, and the number tied to your bed. The only name this place has time to learn. Tonight, you are going to spend one night inside a Victorian Charity Hospital Ward, the infirmary of a world that called itself the richest on earth and built out of that wealth a place to keep its poorest alive in exchange for nearly everything that made them themselves. We will take the whole night, hour by quiet hour, from the pillow of bed 11, the small locker beside each bed, and what the dying leave inside it, the drawn curtain no one explains, the strange rules of who deserves a charity bed at all, and the long, dark hours after the lamp goes down, when a place like this is only a great many people lying awake in the same room, each one alone. None of it will be shouted. None of it ever was. This is history the way it was actually lived, slowly in the body and mostly in the dark. So make yourself warmer than they were ever allowed to be. Let your own room go quiet, and let yourself sink the way the long ward is sinking now, bed by bed and breath by breath, into the first night of being kept alive by strangers who will never learn your name. You belong tonight to no one, and so tonight you belong to all of them. The first thing you learn about a charity ward at night is that it is never silent and never still, and never, for all its 30 sleeping bodies, quite asleep. You had thought, lying down, that the dark would be empty, that whatever else this place took from you, it would at least give you the ordinary mercy of quiet, the way the road had given it, the way the church porch had given it on the nights before the road, when there was nowhere left but stone, and you learned that stone, at least, did not breathe back.
But the ward breathes. That's the thing you understand now, in the long, cold middle of the night. The ward breathes, all around you, on every side, 30 pairs of lungs working the same close air. And it is built to. That is the strange part, the part you will only understand later. The breathing is by design. The beds stand the regulation distance apart, a clear yard between each iron frame and the next, not for your comfort, but so the air can move between them. Because the great Miss Nightingale herself wrote that a hospital should, above all things, do the sick no further harm, and that the first thing the sick need, before medicine, before food, is air. 1,000 cubic feet of it to each bed, the rule says. Air and the moving of air. So the high windows are cracked an inch even in the cold, and the long room pulls breath through itself all night like a single sleeping animal. And you lie inside it, one cell of it, breathing what the woman 3 beds down has breathed, and the dying woman at your left, and the empty bed across the way. It is not one sound. You try at first to make it one sound, the way you would make the sea one sound if you stood far enough back from it. But you are not far back from this. You are inside it. And so it comes to you in pieces, each one separate, each one a person. The cough 3 beds down, wet and patient. The cough of someone who has been coughing so long the body has stopped expecting it to end. The thin whistle of breath from the bed to your left, where an old woman lies with her mouth open, drawing air through some narrowed place in her chest, a sound like wind under a door. The creak of iron behind you as a body turns on a frame too narrow to turn on, and then a moment later the creak again as the same body turns back, because there is no comfortable way to lie on a charity bed, and the night is very long, and the only thing left to do with it is turn.
And under all of it, holding all of it, the breathing, the great slow tide of it, in and out. 30 women you cannot see, breathing in the dark, and you cannot tell this is the part that empties you. You cannot tell from the breathing which of them are sleeping and which of them are awake. The breath of the sleeping and the breath of the wakeful sound exactly the same in the dark. You lie there and you think every one of these women is alone right now, exactly as alone as I am, lying with her eyes open or closed, listening to the same breathing, certain she is the only one not sleeping. And not one of us will ever say so. We will lie here, 30 of us, each one sure she is the only one awake, and in the morning we will not speak of it, because the thing we have in common is the very thing that keeps us apart. This is the paradox of the place, and it arrives the way everything here arrives, not as a blow, but as a seeping, a cold coming up through the floor. You are not alone. You have never in your life been so completely not alone. There are 30 women within 20 feet of you. There is a night nurse at the end of the ward with a lamp turned low, paid to sit awake from the bell at 9 to the bell at 5, watching. There are hands in this building that will come if you call out, water that will be brought, a doctor who will look at you in the morning on his round. You are surrounded. You are attended. You are, in the plainest sense of the word, kept warm enough, kept from the road and the cold and the quiet dying that was waiting for you out there. And you have never been more alone, because not one of them is yours. That is the whole of it. You can reach your hand into the dark and very nearly touch the woman in the next bed, and she is a stranger, and she will die a stranger, and if she dies tonight, you will not know her name, and if you die tonight, she will not know yours, and the nurse will write a number in the night book, and the bed will be stripped and carbolic washed and made up clean before the morning is properly light.
You are held by 30 hands and known by none. You are cared for by an entire institution and belong to no one inside it. The card tied to the iron foot of your bed does not say Martha. It says Bed 11, Fever, Charity. A number, a complaint, and the word that means no one is paying. And that card is the whole of what this place knows of you, and the whole of what it has time to know. The care is real. You must keep hold of that. It is the realest thing that has happened to you in months. And the care has no you in it at all. They are keeping a number alive. They do not know there is a Martha. And the longer you lie here, the more you wonder whether there still is, whether a person can be a person in any way that matters if there is no one left in the world who knows her name and would grieve to hear it stopped. You belong tonight to no one.
And so tonight, and this is the part that is almost a comfort and almost the cruelest thing of all, you belong to all of them, to the cough and the whistle and the turning iron and the great slow tide of the breathing the regulations built. You are one of 30 cells in the same breathing animal, and the air you give back is the air the next one takes. There is no one here who is yours, and there is no one here who is not. You cannot decide whether that is the loneliest thought you have ever had or the only thing keeping you from coming apart, so you hold both, the way you are holding the small cold mitten in your fist, and you do not let go of either. The matron's keys somewhere down the ward, far off, then nearer, then far off again. The only clock the place keeps, not the hour. The keys do not tell the hour. They tell only that the night is being walked, that someone is moving through the dark while the rest of you lie still in it. By the second night, the women say, you stop hearing them. They become the sound the silence makes, the way the breathing is, the way your own heart is. But tonight is the first night, and you hear everything, and the keys go far off and nearer and far off again, marking out a night that has only just begun. And then, you do not know what makes you notice it, only that you do. You become aware of the empty bed. It is across the ward and a little down, on the far side, where the lamp does not quite reach. You cannot see it so much as feel it, a gap in the breathing, a place where the slow tide does not rise. Every other bed in the long room is breathing. You have lain here long enough now to feel the shape of it, but there, in that one place, there is no breath. The bed is made. You can just make out the pale square of it, the blanket squared off, the pillow plumped, everything ready, a bed waiting for someone. And you think at first that it is simply empty, that there are 30 beds and only 29 of you, that you have miscounted. But the woman in the bed to your right shifts and murmurs half into her own sleep, as though she has felt you looking. Don't mind that one, that's Sarah's. And something in the way she says it, the past of it, the closed door of it, tells you not to ask where Sarah is. Tells you that that's Sarah's does not mean Sarah is coming back. That this morning there was a woman in that bed, breathing into the same tide as the rest of you, and now the bed is made and squared and waiting, and no one has said where she has gone, and no one will, and the nurse walked past it on her round, without slowing, the way you walk past a thing you have decided not to look at.
You will learn, before this night is over, what it means when a bed in a charity ward is made up clean in the small hours. You will learn what the drawn curtain means, and why the women do not say it aloud, and why they call it by a softer name when they have to call it anything at all. But not yet, not tonight, not in this hour. For now there is only the made bed across the ward, and the gap in the breathing where Sarah used to be, and the cold understanding that the bed will not stay empty long, that by tomorrow night there will be a new number tied to its iron foot, a new woman lying in it, certain she is the only one awake. You turn your face into the thin flock pillow. It smells of carbolic and of strangers. The keys go far off and nearer and far off again. The ward breathes around you, 30 lungs by the regulation, one of them gone since morning, and you lie in the middle of it, kept and warm enough and utterly unknown, and you listen to the dark be full, and you wait for it to teach you the rest. You belong tonight to no one, and so tonight you belong to all of them.
You do not see it happen the first time. That is the thing about the curtain. It is made so that you will not see, and the not seeing is the whole of its purpose. And you come in time to understand that the not seeing is a kindness, the only kind of kindness a place like this has to give. It is sometime in the deepest part of the night when you first become aware of it. Not a sound exactly, or not one sound, the way nothing here is one sound. A change in the breathing, the great slow tide of the ward, the in and out of 30 women, shifts somewhere down the room, the way a field of long grass shifts when something moves through it that you cannot see. A bed creaks, but differently, not the restless turning you have learned to ignore, but a settling, a being attended to, the creak of a frame taking the weight of someone leaning over it, and then the small, wet sounds of cloth and water, and then very low, a voice you have not heard before tonight, the night nurse who has sat all this while at the end of the ward behind her low lamp, and who is now, you realize, no longer at the end of the ward. She is 3 beds down on the far side, where the whistling has been, the thin whistle of breath through a narrowed chest, the old woman drawing air like wind under a door. You had stopped hearing it, the way you stop hearing your own heart, and now you notice it only because it is not there. It has stopped. Sometime in the last hour, between one of your own shallow breaths and the next, the whistle stopped, and you did not mark the moment, and no one woke you to mark it, and the ward breathed on without it as though it had never been part of the tide at all. And now there is the curtain.
You hear it more than see it, the dry rattle of small rings dragged along an iron rail, a sound like a held breath let slowly out. They keep a screen for this, mounted on casters, stood folded against the wall by day, where you would not think to wonder what it was for. That is the first thing that empties you, lying very still now, your own breath gone careful, that the screen exists at all, that it is kept ready, that a place can do this so often it has built a procedure for it, and given the procedure a name. The last offices, the nurses call it, the last things done for a body by the living. There is a right order to it, written down in the same kind of book that holds the rule about the cubic feet of air. The washing, the closing of the eyes, the binding of the jaw, the clean linen, the hands laid one upon the other. Miss Nightingale herself, in the little book the better nurses carry, wrote that the dying must be spared above all things the knowledge that they are watched dying, that the nurse's first duty to the dying is the same as to the living, air and quiet, and the mercy of not being made a spectacle. So the screen goes round, and behind it the soft sounds of work, water and cloth, and the murmur of the nurse, not unkind, never unkind, saying the small ordinary things you say to a person who can no longer hear them, because that is what your hands have learned to do while they perform the last offices in the dark. No one else stirs. That is the second thing. You lie there certain you are the only one awake, the only one who has heard the whistle stop, and the rings drag along the rail.
And then you understand, with the cold coming up through the floor, that you are not, that all around you in the dark, women are lying exactly as still as you are, exactly as awake, their breath gone exactly as careful, every one of them listening to the curtain and the water and the murmur, and not one of them moving, not one of them speaking, the whole ward holding itself still around the drawn square of cloth, the way the body holds itself still around a wound. 30 women, awake in the dark, all pretending to sleep, all granting the bed behind the screen the one thing the ward can give it, the dignity of not being watched, the not seeing as a kindness. You understand it now. It is the only privacy this place has, and they are all, silently, giving it.
You do not know her name, the woman behind the curtain. You lay 20 feet from her all night, and you heard her breathe, and you do not know her name, and you never will. And you understand, lying there, what the morning will hold, because there is a procedure for the morning, too. Before the ward wakes, before the bell at 5, while it is still dark, 2 porters will come with a covered bier, and the body will be carried out the far door, the one that does not go to the street, but down to the cold room at the back they do not name to your face, but the women name among themselves, the dead house, the mortuary, the place where the parish keeps its dead until the parish can bury them. It is done before light on purpose, so that the ward, waking, will see only an empty bed, stripped and carbolic washed and made up square and clean, the pillow plumped, everything ready. A bed that looks exactly like the bed across the ward and a little down, the one the woman beside you called Sarah's in a voice with a closed door in it. You understand that now. You understand what Sarah's made bed meant. You understand the softer word, and you understand that you slept through Sarah's carrying out the way the others are tonight, pretending to sleep through this one. Because they do not say the word. You will notice this in the morning and in all the mornings after, that no one in the ward ever says it plainly. They say a woman was taken in the night. They say she went quiet. They say of an empty made-up bed, only that's so-and-so's in the past tense, with the door closed on it, and they look away. And you learn to look away, too, because to say the word aloud in the long room would be to let it into the air that all of you have to go on breathing. The regulations move 1,000 cubic feet of air in this ward every hour to keep the living alive. The women have their own rule, unwritten, about what may be let into that air. The word is not let in. The curtain is drawn instead, and the drawn curtain says everything the word would say and lets no one have to hear it. This is the forbidden thing, then, not forbidden by the matron, not written in any book the parish keeps, but forbidden the way the deepest things are forbidden, by common silent consent. You are not to watch. You are not to name it. You are to lie still in the dark and let the screen do its work and pretend with 30 others that you are asleep. And the pretending is not cowardice, and it is not coldness. You understand that now. It is the last courtesy the poor can afford to pay each other. In a life where they could keep her nothing else, not her health, not her name, not the small wage that might have bought her a bed in a house where someone knew her, they can keep her this. They can keep her unwatched. They can grant her the screen, and the silence, and the softer word, and the made bed in mourning that says nothing happened that anyone is willing to say.
And here is the part you turn over and over, the part that is the cruelest thing and the kindest thing at once. she did not die alone. That is what the curtain is for. The nurse was there, paid to be there, a stranger, knowing nothing of her, but there, her hands in the water, her voice low over the bed, performing the last offices to the very end. In a place where no one knew her name, someone closed her eyes and bound her jaw and folded her hands and washed her clean for the dark room at the back. The care had no her in it. The care never has anyone in it here. And the care was, at the last, the only thing in the room, a stranger's hands and a stranger's voice and a drawn screen and 30 women lying awake granting her their silence. And somehow that was not nothing. Somehow, in the arithmetic of this place, that was very nearly everything. She belonged tonight to no one. And so tonight she belonged to all of them. And all of them lay still and let her go. You hold the small cold mitten in your fist. You tell yourself it is warm. You think, you cannot help it, of how you would want it done when your turn comes, as it comes to every number tied to every iron bed in this long room. You would want the curtain. You would want the not watching. You would want the last offices done by hands that did not know you, but were gentle anyway, and the softer word, and the made bed, and the carrying out before light, so that no one waking had to see. And you understand that by lying still tonight, by not watching, by not saying the word, you have already promised it to her and to the next one and to yourself. The ward keeps its terrible bargain in both directions. It will not know your name, and it will draw the curtain for you all the same. The rings drag back along the rail, the dry rattle in reverse, the held breath drawn in again. The work behind the cloth is done. You do not look. You keep your face to the carbolic-smelling pillow and your eyes on the dark, and you listen to the nurse fold the screen and roll it back toward the wall on its small casters, her steps quiet on the boards, back toward the low lamp at the end of the ward. The bed 3 down on the far side is occupied still, and will be until the porters come in the last dark hour before the bell. By tomorrow night there will be a new number tied to its iron foot, a new woman lying in it, certain she is the only one awake, listening to a tide she does not yet know will one day, quietly, leave her out of it too. The matron's keys far off, then nearer, then far off again. The only clock the place keeps, walking the night that does not stop for anyone it loses. The ward breathes around you, 30 lungs, one of them gone still since the morning, one gone quiet within the hour, and pulls the cold, clean air through itself, in and out, keeping the living alive. You belong tonight to no one, and so tonight you belong to all of them. And when the curtain comes for you, they will lie still and not watch and let you go.
There is a locker beside your bed. You did not notice it when they brought you in. You noticed nothing then but the warmth and the bath and the number. But you notice it now in the long dark after the curtain, because your hand, reaching down off the edge of the thin mattress, finds it, a small tin cupboard, cold to the touch, bolted to the floor between your bed and the next, no taller than a milking stool, with a little door and a hasp and no lock. No lock, that is the first thing it tells you. A place this careful,
this full of rules, this ready with a screen and a procedure and a softer word, and it does not lock the lockers. You will understand why before the night is over, and the understanding will be one of the saddest you carry out of this place. They do not lock the lockers because there is nothing in them worth the locking. Because the women who lie in these beds arrived as you arrived, with everything they owned already small enough to carry in one closed fist. The locker is not built to keep a thing safe. It is built to give a thing somewhere to be. And it is not, you will learn, the only place your few things are accounted for. When they took your clothes at the gate and baked them, a nurse turned out the pockets and wrote down what was in them in a book kept for the purpose, the property book, the women call it, though it has a longer name stamped on the cover. One shawl, brown, worn. One comb, 4 halfpenny. Each thing listed in a hand that did not slow for it. Each thing tied in a labeled bag with your bed number inked on the cloth, and the bag carried away to a shelf in a back room to wait for the day you are discharged or the day you are not. That is the parish's account of what you own, a line in a book, a bag on a shelf, a number on the cloth. And it is a true account, and a careful one, and it has in it not one word of what any of it meant. The property book records that you owned a comb. It does not record that the comb was your mother's. There is no column for that. There has never been a column for that in any book the parish keeps.
So you have two accounts of yourself in this building. The number on the bed and the bag on the shelf, what the ward owns of you, and the locker, what you keep of yourself. And the second one is the only one that is true. You open yours. You cannot help it. The little door swings on its hinge like a coin set down on wood, and inside there is the smell of old tin and older dust, and there is nothing. Your locker is empty. Of course it is. You came in with the clothes they took and the small cold mitten in your fist, and the mitten is not going in the locker. The mitten is staying where it is, in your hand, where you can feel it. So your locker holds the dark and the dust and the cold, and you close the little door again, gently, the coin on wood sound, and you lie back and you think about the others. Because the other lockers are not all empty. You know this without looking. You know it the way you have come to know everything in this place, by the small evidence the dark gives up. Earlier, before the curtain, you heard a locker open and close down the ward, the coin on wood sound, and then a silence that was a woman holding something, and then the sound again. People come to their lockers in the night. They open the little doors, and they take out the one thing, and they hold it, and they put it back. And you understand that the locker is the last private place a person has in a building that has taken everything else, the last few inches of the world that are hers, behind a door that does not lock because it does not need to, because the unwritten rule of the ward, the same rule that draws the curtain and keeps the word out of the air, is that you do not open another woman's locker. Not ever, not even to look. What is in there is hers, the last of her, and you leave it be. They hold, mostly, almost nothing, and what little they hold is worth, at the pawnbroker's, almost nothing too. A comb, a thimble, a folded scrap of paper worn soft as cloth along its creases. Small things, broken things, things a pawnbroker would not give a farthing for. And here is what the lockers teach you, the thing that takes the breath. Every one of those worthless things is, to the woman who keeps it, the most valuable object in the building, more valuable than the iron beds, more valuable than the great copper, more valuable than the parish's whole cold, careful machinery of keeping the poor alive. Because value You understand now, lying in the dark with your hand on a cold tin door. Value is not a thing has. Value is a thing a person gives it. The comb is worth nothing, and it is worth everything, because it was hers, because it sat in her hair, because it is the last witness left that her hair was once combed by someone who loved her, or by her own hand on a morning that she still had mornings that were hers.
This is the locker's quiet argument against the property book and the number both. The book says, 1 comb, recorded, no value. The number says, you are a complaint and a charge. And the locker says, no, you are the keeper of one small, worthless, priceless thing. And as long as you keep it, you are still someone, still a person who chose what to save. Still a woman with a thing that is hers in a place that has made everything else theirs. The number is what the ward knows of you. The bag on the shelf is what the ward owns of you. The locker is what you know of yourself. And the 3 of them sit in the same dark all night. The iron bed, the backroom shelf, the tin cupboard. And you lie among them, holding your small, cold mitten. And you understand at last why you will not set it down in the locker. Because the locker is for the thing you can bear to put behind a door. And there are some things you cannot put behind a door. Not here, not yet. Not while the night is this long and this full of the breathing of strangers. And then there is what happens to a locker when its bed goes empty. You did not see it tonight. You had your face to the pillow and your eyes on the dark while the screen did its work 3 beds down. But you will see it on a morning soon, and you already half know how it goes. When a woman is carried out before the bell, someone must empty her locker. A nurse, or one of the up patients who does the small work for an extra half ration. They open the little door. The coin on wood sound, only now there is no one to hear it as hers. And they take out whatever is inside. And they look at it. And they do not know what it meant. Because the meaning went out the far door before the light with the woman who carried it. There is a procedure even for this. A small and a sad one. The things are gathered, added to the bag on the shelf, noted in the property book against a relative who almost never comes. And then, in the end, let go. The locker is emptied. The little door is shut. The cupboard waits, cold and dark and ownerless, for the next woman and the next small, priceless thing.
You lie in the dark and you listen to the ward breathe. 30 lungs, 2 gone since the morning. And you think how the whole true wealth of this place, the only wealth in it that is real, could be carried out in 2 cupped hands, and would be worth, on any shelf in any pawn shop in London, perhaps a shilling for the lot. And you think, when the curtain comes for me, someone will open this door and find it empty, and they will turn instead to my closed hand and work my fingers open gently, the way you open the hand of the dead, and they will find the one thing I would not put behind the little door, and they will not know what it is. They will hold it a moment, a child's mitten, knitted, too small for any hand, and they will write it in no book, because there is no column for it, and they will not know whose small hand it was made for, or why a grown woman carried it through the fever in a closed fist. But you know, and that is the thing you decide, lying there in the dark with your hand shut tight, that before the curtain comes, while you are still breathing,
while the meaning is still in the hand that holds it, you will find the words for the mitten. You will say it once, sideways, the careful Ward way, to someone, so that the meaning has somewhere to go that is not only your closing hand. Because you have understood the locker now, and the locker has understood you, and the lesson is the same one the whole long room keeps teaching. A thing is only worth what someone living gives it. And you are still living, and you still have, for one more night, something to give. You belong tonight to no one, and so tonight you belong to all of them.
You have been holding it all night, through the gate and the bath and the number, through the long room and the breathing and the curtain 3 beds down, through the locker and its little door that does not lock. Through all of it, your hand has been closed around the small cold mitten, and you have not once opened your fingers to look at it, because you do not need to look. You know it by touch better than you know your own face. You knit it yourself. You know the place where you dropped a stitch and went back and could not bear to unpick it, so you carried the fault on, a little pucker near the thumb, and the pucker is still there, under your thumb now, in the dark, where it has always been. It is too small for any hand. That is the first thing a stranger would notice if a stranger ever opened your fingers and looked, and one will, you understand now, on a morning that is coming, a child's mitten, knitted in gray wool gone grayer, the wool you could afford, which was no color at all, which you told yourself was the color of doves and not the color of ash, too small for any hand but the one it was made for, and the one it was made for is not here, has not been here for a long time, was small and is smaller now, and is somewhere you cannot follow yet, though the ward in its patient way, in its breathing and its curtain and its number, keeps reminding you how short the road is between this bed and there. You do not say his name, even to yourself. You have learned that from the women, though you knew it before you came, that there are words you do not let into the air, because the air is shared, because to say it is to make it true in a way that the holding does not. So you hold instead. You hold the mitten, and you do not say the name, and you tell yourself, as you have told yourself every night for longer than you can count, that it is warm, that there is still a small hand inside it, that if you just do not open your fingers, if you just keep it closed and keep it warm, then the hand is still there, and the boy is still there, asleep somewhere just out of sight, and you are only keeping his mitten for him the way a mother keeps a thing, against the morning, against the cold, against the moment he will come and want it back. This is the lie you are good at. You told the women you would find the words for it before the curtain came. You meant it in the locker dark, when it seemed a thing you could do, but now, holding it, you understand how hard a thing you promised, because the words are the opposite of the holding. The holding keeps him warm, the words would let him be cold, and you have spent so long, so very long, keeping him warm in the only place he is left, which is your closed hand, that to open the hand and say the true thing, that the mitten is not warm, that it has not been warm in a long time, that the hand it was made for is a small cold thing in the ground of a parish a long way from here, would be to let go of the last warmth in the world. And you do not know, lying here, whether a person can do that and go on breathing.
He was small. You will let yourself have that much in the dark with the ward breathing around you. He was small, and he was often cold, because you were poor, because you were always poor, because the work that takes a woman's days does not pay enough to keep a small boy warm. And you knit him the mitten, 2 mittens, there were 2, out of the no-color wool, and you put them on his hands in the mornings, and you blew on his fingers first, your breath, your own warm breath, to start the warmth before the wool took over. And he lost one. Children lose things. That is their work, to lose the things you make them. And yours was no different. And one cold morning, there was only the 1 mitten and a small bare hand. And you scolded him. You remember scolding him. And the scolding is one of the things you carry now, one of the small stones in the locker of you, because you would give the rest of your life to not have scolded him over a thing as nothing as a lost mitten. And then there was only the 1 mitten, and no boy to wear it. You do not say how. The ward would not want it in the air, and neither do you, and it does not matter in the end how. Fever like yours, or the cough, or the cold itself, or one of the 100 small, quiet ways the poor lose their children, the ways that fill no histories and earn no curtains, the ways that happen in rooms with no nurse and no screen and no softer word, only a mother and a small, still hand and a single mitten that would never now find its pair. It does not matter how. It matters only that the hand the mitten was made for stopped needing it, and that you could not, would not, did not put it down. You kept it. Through everything that came after, the room lost, the work lost, the slow falling that ends at a gate like this one, you kept the 1 gray mitten closed in your fist, and you kept it warm with the only heat you had left, which was the lie, which was the not opening, which was the telling yourself night after night that there was still a small hand inside. And here, in the charity ward, in the long dark after the locker, the thing finally finds you that you have been outrunning the length of your whole falling life. The mitten is not warm. It never was, not since the morning the small hand stopped. The warmth was never in the wool. The warmth was in you, was always only in you, in the closed fist and the held breath and the will not to know. And you are tired now, more tired than you have ever been, and the parish has taken your name and your clothes and your breath into its careful keeping. And the one thing it has not been able to take, because you would not let it, is the lie that the mitten is warm. That is yours. That is the last thing that is yours. And you understand, lying here, that keeping it has cost you something you can no longer afford, that a hand closed this tight for this long cannot open to hold anything else, cannot take the cup of water the nurse brings, cannot reach for the small mercies the night still has in it, because it is full. It has been full for years. It is full of a warmth that is not there.
So you do the hardest thing you will do in this place. Harder than the gate, harder than the bath and the number. You open your hand. Just a little. Just enough in the dark where no one can see to lay the mitten flat on your own palm and feel it for what it is. Small and gray and worn and cold. Cold. You make yourself feel the cold of it. You make yourself know that the hand inside is not there and has not been there and is not coming for it in the morning. And it is the worst thing, and it does not kill you, which is its own small, terrible surprise, that you can know the true cold of the mitten and go on breathing, that the ward goes on breathing around you, 30 lungs, and the keys go far off and nearer and far off, and you are still here, still a number on an iron bed, still alive,
and now also, for the first time in years, holding the mitten instead of being held shut by it. And in the dark, very low, sideways, the careful Ward way, you say it. Not the name, not yet, maybe not ever. The name stays out of the shared air, but the rest. You turn your face a little toward the bed at your right, where the younger voice murmured about Sarah, and you do not know if she is awake, and it does not matter. That is the whole grace of the ward, that you can give a thing to the dark, and the dark will keep it whether or not anyone hears. I had a boy, you say. I knit him mittens. He lost the one. I kept the other. That is all. 4 small sentences, no louder than breathing. And the meaning of the mitten, which has lived all these years locked in your closing hand, where it would have died with you and gone out of the world entirely, is out now, in the air, in the breathing tide of the ward, given to the only keeper a place like this allows, not a person, not a name, but the long room itself, the witness of strangers, the dark that holds what no book has a column for. The woman at your right does not answer, but after a moment her hand comes, in the dark, and rests on the edge of your bed, near yours, not taking your hand. The ward does not take, but near, close, the warmth of another living palm a few inches from the cold mitten on yours. And that is the answer. That is the whole answer. Someone living, who does not know your name, has heard that you had a boy, and has put her warmth near your grief, and asked nothing, and will say nothing in the morning. The mitten lies open on your palm. It is not warm, but your hand is open now, and there is another hand near it, and between the two of them, for the first time in a very long time, there is a little real heat in the world that you did not have to lie to feel. You belong tonight to no one, and so tonight you belong to all of them. And somewhere in the dark, an open hand, a gray mitten, and a stranger's warmth a few inches away, 3 small things, worth nothing, worth everything, keeping each other through the rest of the night.
You are alone on the foreshore, but you are never quite alone on the stairs, and the difference is the whole shape of your mornings. Down on the flat, in the 4 hours of the dark, the river belongs to you, and you belong to no one. But there are only so many ways down to the water, and so you meet the others at the worn steps, going down in the dark, coming up in the gray, passing on the green stones with a rag each and a night's cold between you. You do not work together. The river is not large enough to share, and what your hands gather is what another's did not. So you scatter the moment your feet find the mud. But you pass them at the stairs, twice a day, and you have learned to read them the way you read the tide, not their lives, which are nothing to you, but the small weather of them as it touches your own dawn. The thin gray boy they call Sprat is at the coal stretch by the moorings, as he always is, and you give it a wide berth, as you always do, because it is his, and he guards it with a low, steady meanness that is only hunger wearing a hard face. He cuffed you once for straying onto it years back, and you have not forgotten the lesson, which is the lesson the stairs teach about every other person on them. Keep to your own stretch. But you have not forgotten the other thing either. The black morning you came up empty with the cold in your chest, and a lump of his own coal was in your rag, and he had turned away before you could look at him, so that neither of you would have to call it anything. You do not know why he did it. You will never ask. You only carry it, the way you carry the cold, as a fact about how the stairs work, that the same boy can be a wall on a good day, and on a bad one, the only thing between you and an empty rack. The little one is on the near flat, the new one, smaller than you were when you began, with no name yet because she has not lasted long enough to earn one. You watch her sidelong, the way the older ones once watched you, and you see what she does not know, that she is working too close to where the mud goes soft and dark and will take a child to the waist and hold her while the tide comes back. You do not call out. A warning shouted across the flat would frighten her off the river, and a frightened child is a careless one. So you make a note in yourself to walk her stretch with her once in the gray, pointing with your chin and not your mouth, because that is how it was shown to you by someone whose face you no longer remember, and it is the only inheritance you can pass on. You will not tell her about the soft places. You will show her. That is the only kind of telling the stairs trust.
And there is the old one, whom the stairs call nothing at all, because she has outlasted every name they ever gave her. She is at the far steps in the gray, where the going is easiest because her knees will not take the green stones any longer, and she works the high mud now, the thin pickings the tide leaves where the strong do not trouble to go. You watch her the way you watch the little one, only backward, for the little one is what you were, and the old one is what the river makes of you if it does not take you first. 40 winters on the foreshore, they say, though no one has counted, and she would not tell you if you asked, and nothing to show for any of them but a back bent to the shape of stooping, and a rag no fuller than your own. She does not speak to you. She does not speak to anyone. But once, in a hard frost, you saw her stand a long while at the top of the stairs with her hands drawn up inside her shawl, not going down, only looking at the river, the way you look at a thing that has taken everything from you and is still, somehow, the only home you have. And you understood, without a single word passing between you, the whole of where the stairs lead. And the strange thing, the thing you turn over on the cold climb, is that you were not frightened by it, because there is nowhere else for any of you to go, and a road you cannot leave is not a thing worth fearing. It is only a thing to walk. She is the far end of it. The little one has just set her small foot on the near end. You are somewhere in the middle, between the child who does not yet know the soft places and the woman who has known them too long. And the three of you, the small, the middling, and the old, working your separate stretches in the same black water, are the only proof the dawn keeps that a person can live a whole life at the river's edge and never once be missed by the warm world above the stairs. And it is the Tasher you climb toward this dawn, because you have something that is his to carry now, and not yours. You know him the way everyone knows him, only that, the Tasher, as though there were no other, and for the stairs there is not. He has a lantern you do not have, and boots to the thigh you do not have, and he goes where you cannot, into the deep mud, and the brick tunnels, and the soft bottom of the ebb. He does not work your stretch. He works the places the river hides things. But he is the one face on the stairs that has never, in all your life, looked at you as a thing to chase off. And that is the only fact about him you need this morning, because the law of the forbidden find has a second half, and the second half is telling. And there is only one person on the whole river you can tell. You find him at the top in the first gray, scraping silt from his lantern glass with his thumb. He looks at the place where your coat should be before he looks at your face, because he misses nothing. And your face tells him most of it before you speak. You say the where. You say there is a ring. You say you covered it. And you do not say with what, because he can see with what. And he listens. He listens all the way to the end, not waiting to speak, not weighing whether to believe, only taking the words and holding them carefully, the way you hold a found thing, because it was someone's.
When you are done, he is quiet a moment. Then he says, in a voice like the river over stones, that you did right. You did right. And it undoes something in you that you did not know was held shut. You cannot remember the last time anyone said a thing to you that was not about coal or stretches or getting out of the way. You have to look hard at the lantern glass for a moment because the quiet in your chest has tried to come up into your eyes, and you do not, on the stairs, in the gray, let it. But it was said. A grown man with a lantern and the river's whole long memory in him looked at a barefoot girl with no coat and said, "You did right." And you will carry that, too, the way you carry the cold and Sprat's lump of coal, as one of the few warm facts you own. He will see to the rest. That is understood without much saying, the burial or the name or whatever rough kindness the rivermen keep among themselves for the river's dead. It is out of your hands now, passed up to the one pair of hands old enough to carry it. You gave the dead the only thing a child could give, to be the one who was sorry and the one who told. He gives the rest, which is a man's work and not yours, because you must be back down on the flat tomorrow before the light, the same as every dawn.
And climbing past them all in the gray, past Sprat at his coal, past the nameless one who does not know the soft places yet, past the old one at the far steps looking at the water, away from the tosher and his lantern going down toward the deep, you think that this is the nearest thing you have to a household. Not a family. You have learned not to reach for words that mean too much, but a household, a set of people bound to the same cold place by the same hunger, who do not love one another and would never say the word, and who nonetheless put coal in an empty rag and would show a new child the soft places and listen all the way to the end and say you did right. You belong to no one. That law does not change, but you belong to no one among others who belong to no one, and there is a kind of belonging in that, cold and sidelong and unspoken, that is the only kind the river allows, and the only kind you have ever had. The tide is coming in behind you now, gentle, almost careful, folding back over the flat and the soft places and the place you covered. The others are scattering off the top of the stairs into the waking city, each to whatever doorway 4 pence has bought, invisible again the moment the light is full. By midday you will all be gone, no household anyone would recognize, no names the warm world would know. But you will meet again at the turn of the next tide, in the dark, on the green stairs, going down, and that meeting, twice a day, in the cold, without a word, is the whole of the company you have. It has to be enough. And this gray morning, with a man's 3 words still warm in your chest, it is, for once, almost more than enough. It is almost warm.
By now you have begun to know them. Not their names. Names come slowly here, or not at all. But their breathing, their coughs, the particular creak of their particular iron frames, the way you come to know the people of a street, not by introduction, but by the sounds they make through a shared wall. You have lain among these 30 women for the better part of a night, and the dark, which took your sight, has given you something in its place. It has made you a listener. And a listener learns a ward the way a blind woman learns a room, by patience, by repetition, by the slow gathering of small certainties, until the strangers around you become, without you quite deciding it, known. There was the whistling woman, on your left. You will start with her, because she is the one who is gone, and because the gone are owed the first place in any honest accounting of a ward. You never saw her face. You knew her only by the thin whistle of her breath, the wind under a door sound, the narrow chest working all evening at the simple labor of staying alive, and then, in the deep of the night, behind the drawn screen, not working at it any longer. You did not know her name. You do not know it now. But you knew her breathing better than you have known the breathing of people you loved, because you lay beside it in the dark and counted on it, and at the end marked its absence the way you would mark a clock that stopped. That is a kind of knowing. It is the only kind the ward gives, and you have decided tonight that it counts, that to have heard a woman breathe her last hours, and to hold the fact of her now when no one else in the world may be holding it, is to have known her, in the way the poor are permitted to know one another, completely and namelessly, and too late.
To your right is the young one. Her you know better, because she has spoken. Twice now, both times into the dark, both times the small mercy of a voice arriving when you needed one. "Don't mind that one, that's Sarah's," she said, early, of the made-up empty bed, and taught you, without meaning to, the whole grammar of how this place loses people. And later, in the worst hour, when you opened your hand and laid the cold mitten flat and said the 4 small sentences about the boy, it was her hand that came across the gap between the beds and rested near yours, not taking it, the ward does not take, but near, close, the warmth of a living palm a few inches from your grief. You do not know her name either. You know that she is young by her voice, that she is not so ill as some by the ease of her breathing, that she has been here long enough to know the grammar, and not so long as to have stopped offering her hand to a stranger, which is its own kind of timeline, its own way of measuring how long a person can stay soft in a place built to harden them. You think she will leave before you. You hope she will. You hope she goes out the near door, the street door, the one the living use, and not the far one. And you understand that this small, fierce hope for a woman whose name you do not know is the closest thing to love the ward has let you feel since they took the boy. Then there is the one who does the small work, an up-patient, the women call them, those well enough to be on their feet, but not well enough or not lucky enough to be discharged, and so they stay and they earn their keep and an extra half ration by doing the 100 quiet tasks the nurses have no hands for. She carries the slops, she fills the water cans, she helps to turn the ones who cannot turn themselves. And she is the one you have worked this out, lying here from the sounds, who empties the lockers in the morning when a bed goes still. You heard her tonight, after the screen was folded and rolled away, moving down the far side of the ward in the last dark hour. The coin on wood sound of a little tin door, a pause, the soft work of hands gathering small things into an apron, the door shut again. She did it gently. You could hear that she did it gently, that she is not hardened to it even now, that each little hoard she lifts out costs her something, even though she does not know what any of it meant. There is a particular tenderness in a person who handles the worthless, priceless things of the dead with care she is not paid for and no one is watching her give. She is, you think, the kindest person in the room, and her kindness is spent entirely on women who will never know they received it, because they are gone before she comes, and the living do not watch her do it, and so her gentleness exists in the world, witnessed by no one at all, except tonight by you, awake in the dark, who heard it and will carry it.
The night nurse sits at the end of the long room behind her low lamp, and you know her least because she is the one who must not become your friend. That is part of her work, to be near and not near, to be the hands that come when you call and not the heart that breaks when you go. She drew the curtain tonight. She performed the last offices for the whistling woman with her own hands, gently, murmuring the small nothings to a body past hearing. And then she carried the basin away and went back to her lamp and sat down again to watch the rest of you breathe, because the watching does not stop for grief, because there are 29 others still breathing, and her duty is to all of them, and to none of them, the same terrible arithmetic you have been doing all night from inside the beds, done now from the chair at the end. You used to think a person who could sit calm at the end of a dying ward must be cold. You do not think so now. You think she has simply learned the thing the ward teaches everyone in the end, that you cannot hold 30 griefs in 2 hands, and so you hold the cloth and the basin and the lamp instead, and you let the holding of those be the love, because they are what you have hands enough for. And the matron whom you barely see, who walks the night with the keys, far off and nearer and far off again, she is the rules made into a person. She measured you at the gate. She decided what kind of poor you were. She has the power by a word in a book to keep you or to remove you, and she carries that power down the dark ward on a ring of iron that announces her coming, so that no one is ever surprised by her, which is, you have come to think, its own small mercy. The keys are a courtesy, a way of saying, I am here, the rules are walking, compose yourselves, so that no woman is ever caught unguarded by the authority that holds her life. Even the machinery you have learned tonight tries to be kind in the small ways left to it. The keys go far off and nearer and far off again, and you no longer hear them as a threat, only as the sound of someone walking through the dark, making sure the breathing continues. This is the cast of the long room, then, the gone woman you knew by her breathing, the young one who gave you your hand, the up-patient whose unwatched gentleness empties the lockers of the dead, the nurse who holds the cloth because she cannot hold the grief, the matron who is the rules with a tired human face. 5 women, 6 counting you, and not one of you knows another's full name, and not one of you belongs to another, and yet here you all are, bound in the dark by nothing but proximity and breathing and the small unpaid kindnesses that pass between people who have nothing else to give. You came in thinking you were alone. You are not alone. You are in a room full of strangers who will never be anything but strangers, and who are tonight, by some arithmetic you cannot explain and have stopped trying to, the nearest thing to family you have left in the world. You hold the mitten, open on your palm. You think of the boy who had a name you do not say, and who knew yours, and who was the one person in all your life who belonged completely to you, and to whom you belonged completely. And you understand, lying among these nameless others, that what you lost when you lost him was not only him, but that, the being known, the belonging, the having of a person who was yours and whose you were. The ward cannot give it back. No one here will ever know your name and grieve to hear it stopped. But the ward gives in its place this smaller, stranger thing, the young one's hand, the up-patient's gentleness, the nurse's cloth, the keys that announce themselves so as not to frighten you, 1,000 small belongings that add up to no single belonging at all, and that are, tonight, enough. Not enough to fill it. Nothing will ever be enough to fill it, but enough to get you through to morning, which is, in this place, the only enough there is. The ward breathes around you, 30 lungs less the one gone still, and you breathe with it, in and out, one stranger among strangers, known by no one, holding them all. The keys go far off, and nearer, and far off again. The young one's breathing is easy at your right. The lamp burns low at the end of the room, and you lie in the middle of the long dark among the others, and you find that the thought which emptied you at the start of the night, not one of them is mine, has turned itself over somewhere in the hours into the only comfort the ward had to offer all along. You belong tonight to no one. And so, tonight, you belong to all of them.
There is a rhythm to the deep of the night, and you have learned it now, the way you learned the rhythm of any place you are kept long enough, not by being told it, but by lying inside it until it becomes the shape of your own waiting. The ward runs on rounds. The matron walks, and then she does not walk. The keys go far off, and nearer, and far off again, and then there is a long stillness when they do not come at all, and in that stillness the ward is left to itself, and the hours between the rounds are the longest and the slowest, and, you have come to think, the most honest hours the place has, because in them nothing is decided, nothing is sorted, nothing is kept or removed, and the long room simply breathes in the dark and waits for the light it cannot yet imagine. This is the hour of small, repeated things. You have watched them, or rather you have listened to them, until they have stopped being events and become weather, the slow, soft procedures of a ward keeping itself through the night, each one done quietly, each one done again, each one a small turning of the same wheel. The night nurse arises from her lamp, and you hear the chair give up her weight, and you hear her feet on the boards, slow, unhurried, because there is nowhere to hurry to in the hours between the rounds. She goes down the long room. She stops at a bed. There is the small sound of a cup, of water poured, of a head lifted and laid down again. She moves on. She stops at another. She lays a hand on a forehead, or draws a slipped blanket up, or simply stands a moment listening to a breath to be sure it is still a breath, and then she moves on, and the moving on is itself a kind of lullaby, the soft, regular passage of a careful person through a room of sleeping strangers, checking and checking and checking again. You do not need her to stop at you. That is part of the drift, part of the letting go that the hour asks of you, to lie still and not need, to let the cup pass and the hand pass and be glad they passed to someone who needed them more, and to find in the not needing a kind of rest you had forgotten the body could hold. Earlier in the night you needed everything, needed to know where you were, needed to hold the mitten, needed the young one's hand. Now, in the hours between the rounds, you find you need almost nothing, and the almost nothing is its own quiet country, and you have crossed into it without noticing the border, the way you cross into sleep.
The water can goes down the room and comes back. The slops are carried once softly, the up patient on her quiet feet. Somewhere a woman coughs, and the cough is answered by no one, because it is the ordinary cough of the ordinary night, and not the kind that needs the screen, and you have learned the difference now. You can tell the weather cough from the worse one, the way a shepherd tells the harmless cloud from the one that carries the storm. A frame creaks as a body turns. A breath catches and lets go. The lamp at the end of the room burns its slow, steady burn, and the small flame of it is the one fixed thing in all the moving dark, the north of the ward, the point everything else turns around gently. And the breathing, always under everything, the breathing, 30 lungs less the ones the night has taken, drawing the cold, clean air through the long room, in and out, in and out, the great slow tide that the regulations built, and that has become, over the hours, the sound of your own rest. You no longer hear it as 30 separate breaths.
You did at the start of the night, when every sound was a person, and every person was a stranger, and the strangeness kept you sharp and awake. But the hours between the rounds have worn the edges off, the way water wears a stone, and now the breathing has gathered itself into one sound, one slow sea sound, and you float on it, and you cannot tell your own breath from the ward's, and you have stopped trying, because the trying was the last thing keeping you on the surface, and you are tired, so tired of the surface. This is the work the hour does. It wears you smooth. It takes the sharp, particular griefs of the early night, the curtain, the mitten, the rules, the boy you do not say, and it does not heal them. Nothing here heals anything, but it wears them, rounds them, sets them down for a while in the warm dark, the way you set down a thing too heavy to carry every step of a long road. You are still holding the mitten. You will always be holding the mitten, but your hand has loosened around it in the hours between the rounds, and the loosening is not forgetting. It is only rest, the brief, honest rest of a person who has carried a thing as far as she can carry it tonight, and has agreed, just until morning, just until the keys come back, to let the warm dark help her hold it.
The keys are gone, far off, so far you cannot hear them at all now, and their absence is not frightening. It is the opposite of frightening. It is permission. When the keys are walking, the rules are walking, and a part of you must stay awake to be measured. But in the long stillness between the rounds, the rules are sitting down somewhere, resting their own tired feet, and the ward is left ungoverned for a little while, left to be only a roomful of breathing women and a low lamp and a careful nurse moving softly among them. And in the ungoverned hour, you are not a case, not a number, not a deserving object. You are only a tired woman in a warm bed in the dark, which is, you understand now, all you ever were, all any of them ever were, under the books and the rules and the cards tied to the iron feet of the beds. The light has not changed. You keep waiting for it to change. Some part of you keeps a watch on the high windows, waiting for the first gray thinning that means the night has a far edge after all. But it has not come, not yet. And the not coming has stopped being a worry and become a comfort, because as long as the windows are black, there is nothing to do but rest. No morning to face, no round to be ready for, no decision waiting. The hours between the rounds are a country with no clock but the keys, and the keys are gone, and so time itself has loosened the way your hand has loosened, and you float in a now that does not move, and it is enough. It is more than enough. It is the most peace the place has given you all night. A woman murmurs in her sleep, a few beds down, words you cannot make out, the soft nonsense of a dreaming mind, and then she is quiet again. The up-patient passes once more, her apron rustling faintly, her feet sure on the boards she has walked 1,000 times. The nurse returns to her lamp. You hear the chair take her weight again. You hear her settle. And the long room breathes, and the lamp burns, and the dark holds, and nothing happens, and the nothing happening is the whole of the gift. You have spent a life, you think, in rooms where something was always about to happen, a rent due, a word said, a door knocked, a child to feed, a loss to outrun, and here in the hours between the rounds, for the first time you can remember, nothing is about to happen, nothing at all, and the body you have driven so hard for so long is being allowed,
finally to set itself down. You think distantly, the way you think of things on the edge of sleep, that this is what the boy had at the end. Not the cold and the loss and the going, those were yours, those are still yours, but this, a stillness, an hour with no more to be done in it, a setting down. You hope it was like this for him. You hope there was a warm dark and a sound to float on, and a loosening of the small hand around whatever it was holding. You will never know, but you can hope it here, in the hour that has taught you what such a stillness feels like. And the hoping is soft now, not sharp, worn smooth like everything else by the slow water of the hours, and you hold it gently, the hope and the mitten both, in a hand that has almost let go, not of them, never of them, but of the holding tight, the clenching, the long, hard work of not letting the warmth out that you have done every night for years and are not doing just now, just tonight, in the ungoverned dark between the rounds. The breathing rises and falls, the lamp burns low and steady, the keys do not come, and you drift at last on the great slow tide of the ward, one breath among the 30, your own and not your own, carried on the sea sound toward a morning you cannot yet see and no longer need to, because the night has stopped being a thing to get through and become, in these last loosened hours, a thing to rest inside, warm and kept and unknown, and for this one stretch of dark, untroubled, floating, nearly asleep. You belong tonight to no one, and so tonight you belong to all of them. And the tide breathes on, and the lamp burns, and you let it carry you.
In the deep of the night, when the body has gone past tiredness into the strange, clear country beyond it, the mind goes wandering, and yours goes back. It does not choose to. You would not choose it. But the warm dark and the breathing tide and the loosened hand have worn down the wall you keep between now and then. And through the worn place the old life comes, quietly, the way water finds the low ground. And you let it, because you were too tired tonight to do the long, hard work of keeping it out. And because some part of you, the part that knows where the night is heading, would like to walk through the old rooms once more before the light. You were in service. That is where it begins, the falling. Though it did not feel like falling then, it felt like the safest a person of your sort could be. A house in a good street, tall and narrow and full of stairs, and you the maid of all work in it, which means you were the work, all of it, from the cold black grate at 5 a.m. to the last banked fire at midnight. You can feel it still in your hands here in the ward, the particular ache of those mornings, the stone of the kitchen floor under your knees, the brush, the bucket of gray water gone cold, the steps to be scrubbed white before the family woke, so that the day could begin on a clean threshold. Hands and knees. That was the shape of your young life, hands and knees on stone, in the dark, before the dawn, scrubbing a house that was not yours, so that the people it belonged to need never know there had been dirt at all. You did not mind it. That is the thing you would tell the young one in the next bed, if she were awake, if such a thing could be said, that you did not mind the scrubbing. There was a rightness in it, a plain, hard rightness, a thing dirty and then a thing clean, and your own 2 hands the whole of the difference. The grate blacked till it shone, the step white, the copper bright. You took a pride in it that no one ever saw and no one ever paid for, the secret pride of the person who does the unseen work that lets a house pretend it cleans itself. You were good at it.
You rose a little, the way a maid could rise, from the scullery to the kitchen, from all work to a place with a cook above you, and once, very nearly, the promise of being trusted with the front rooms. You had a box with a lock. You had a Sunday afternoon most weeks. You had a character, a written one, that said you were honest and clean and sober. And a character was a thing you could carry from house to house, the one piece of property a girl in service truly owned, her good name written in another woman's hand. And there was a follower. You are allowed, in the deep of the night, to remember that there was a follower, though the rules of the house forbade them, and you kept him secret as the dirt. A man who was kind, and not much more than kind, which in your life had been rare enough to feel like everything. You will not say much of him, even now, even to the dark, only that there was a man, and that he was warm, and that the warmth did not last, the way warmth in your life did not last, that he went the way they go, and left you with the one thing the rules of the house could not forgive: the boy.
You cannot keep a place in service and a child both. That is the rule beneath all the other rules, the one no character can survive. A maid who is with child is a maid dismissed, without the written word that says she is honest, because the having of the child is taken as the proof that she is not. So the box with the lock was packed, and the good street was behind you, and you went out the area door for the last time without a character, which is to say you went out into the world having lost, in a season, the only property you had, your good name in another woman's hand, gone, and nothing now to carry from house to house but a coming child and a story no respectable door would hear the end of. And then it was rooms. You remember the rooms the way you remember the scrubbing, in the hands and the back, only it is a different ache, not the clean hard ache of work, but the long gray ache of the falling. A room first that was almost decent, where the boy was born, and where for a little while, with washing taken in, and your knees back on other women's floors when they would have you, you held the two of you up by the very skill the good street had taught you. You scrubbed still. You scrubbed strangers' steps now, by the job, for pennies, with the boy set down on a folded shawl where you could see him, and it was harder, and it paid less, and there was no character at the end of it, and no Sunday afternoon, but it was work, and you were good at it, and for a while the goodness was enough. It is never enough for long. The rooms got smaller as the money got smaller, the way they do, from the almost decent room to the worse one, to the one you do not let yourself walk through even in memory, even tonight. You scrubbed less because there was less of you to scrub with. The long mornings on stone had taken the strength from your hands, and a woman whose hands have begun to fail cannot get the work that needs strong hands, and so she gets less, and eats less, and fails faster, and the whole thing turns and turns like a wheel running downhill with no one at the brake. You knew where it went. You had seen other women go there. You scrubbed against it with everything you had, on knees that would barely hold you, in the last gray room, with the boy. You stop. The mind goes back, but it will not go all the way. There is a door in the old house of your memory that even the deep night cannot make you open, and behind it is the boy, and the cold, and the mitten with no pair, and you have agreed with yourself a long time ago that you will not walk through that door while you can help it. You feel it standing there in the dark of you, shut. You feel the cold coming under it, but you keep it shut, the way you have kept it shut for years, and the keeping shut is the last hard work your failing hands still do. Not scrubbing now, only holding a door, but it is the same labor at heart, the holding back of a thing that would otherwise come flooding in and take the clean part of you down with it.
So you stand, in memory, in the near side of that door, in the last gray room, and you let yourself remember only this, that you scrubbed it. Even that room, even at the end, you kept your corner of it clean. The one window wiped, the floor by the bed scoured pale, the few things you had left set square, because it was the last thing the good street had given you that no one could take, the knowing how to make a clean place out of a poor one, and you used it to the very bottom of the falling, used it in a room not fit to be called a room, because a woman must keep something of herself, and the something you kept was the white step, the bright copper, the secret pride of the unseen clean. You were a scrubber of other people's houses, and when you had no house and almost no self left, you scrubbed the little that remained, and you held it clean against the dark as long as your hands would close. And then the fever, which does not care how clean you keep your corner, and then the letter, found somehow from someone half remembered, and then the gate and the bath and the number and the warm dark and the long room breathing, and you here now, an old maid of all work with the strength gone from her hands at last, lying in a bed she did not have to scrub, in a house that cleans itself with hands that are not hers, for the first time in her whole life, waited on instead of waiting, washed instead of washing, and not glad of it, not glad, because the price of being washed at last was everything, was the boy, was the good name, was the whole long falling from the white step to the iron bed. You look at your hands in the dark. You cannot see them, but you know them. The swollen knuckles, the skin worn thin, the strength gone out of them that was once the whole of your worth. They scrubbed a tall house in a good street. They blacked 100 grates and whitened 1,000 steps and kept one last gray room clean past all reason. They knitted a mitten. They held a door shut against a flood for years. And tonight, here in the warm dark, they are finally allowed to stop, to lie open and empty on the blanket, holding only the small cold mitten, doing no work at all for the first time you can remember, because there is no step here that is yours to scrub, no grate that is yours to black, no falling left to scrub against, only the breathing and the lamp and the keys far off and the worn place in the wall where the old life came through, closing again slowly now as the night wears on and the body sinks past the clear country into the one beyond it. You belong tonight to no one. And so, tonight, you belong to all of them.
The night is old now. You can feel it in the ward the way you feel the turn of the tide without seeing the water. A thinning, a slackening, the deep middle of the dark beginning somewhere far off to lean toward morning. And in this thinned hour, when you have been emptied of nearly everything, the fear at the gate, the grief of the curtain, the long fall through the old rooms, the holding shut of the door, you find that what is left, when all of that has worn away, is not nothing. It is a few small things. It is 3 small mercies, no larger than coins, worth nothing to anyone who counts in shillings, worth the whole of the night to you. And because you are too tired now to hold anything tightly, you hold them loosely, openly, the way you hold the mitten, and you let yourself for once simply have them. The first mercy is the water. It comes in the deepest part of the night when your mouth has gone to paper and your throat is a dry stone, and you have not asked, because asking is a thing the falling teaches you to stop doing. You learn somewhere in the gray rooms that to ask is to risk a no, and that a no costs more than the thirst. So you do not ask. You lie with the dryness and you bear it, the way you have borne everything. And the nurse comes anyway. She comes on her soft round,
her lamp low, and she stops at your bed, though you have made no sound, and some knowledge in her, some thing she has learned in 1,000 nights of this, that no book taught her, tells her that the woman in this bed is thirsty and will not say so. And she lifts your head. Her hand goes under your head, behind the worn knot of your hair, and she lifts it as gently as you once lifted the boy's, and she puts the cup to your lip, and the water is cool, and it is clean, and it is given to you by a person who is paid to keep you alive, but is not paid for the gentleness. The gentleness is hers. She adds it herself, out of her own tiredness, for nothing. You drink. The stone in your throat dissolves, and she lays your head back down on the bolster as carefully as she lifted it, and says nothing and moves on. And you lie in the dark, with the cool of the water spreading through you, and your eyes stinging, because it has been so long, so very long, since anyone put a hand under your head and gave you something cool to drink, and asked nothing of you in return. A cup of water. That is the first mercy. It is the smallest thing in the world. It is enough to weep over, quietly, in the dark, where no one sees. The second mercy is the blanket.
It is the young one from the bed at your right, the one who told you about Sarah's bed, the one whose hand came across the gap when you spoke of the boy. The cold deepens in the worst hour, the way it does, the dead cold that comes just before the dawn, and you feel it find you, find the thin, worn blanket and the thinner body under it, and you draw yourself smaller against it, the way you have drawn yourself smaller against the cold your whole life, making of your own body the only shelter you have ever reliably owned. And in the dark you hear the small sounds of the young one moving. Not much, she is not strong, but enough. And then something falls across your feet and your legs, a weight, a warmth, her own blanket, or the half of it she can spare, pulled from her own bed and laid over yours by an arm reached blind across the gap between you. She does not speak. You do not speak. To speak would be to make it a thing that must be thanked, and a mercy that must be thanked is half spent in the thanking. The ward knows this, the poor know this, and so the great kindnesses of the long room are done in silence, given sideways, left for the dark to witness instead of words. You feel the warmth of her blanket settle over your cold feet, warmth from a body as poor and as sick as your own, given away in the coldest hour because she heard earlier that you had once had a boy and lost him, and decided, in whatever wordless way the heart decides, that a woman who has lost a boy should not also be cold tonight if she can help it. She has so little, she gives you half of it. That is the second mercy. And you lie under the warmth of a stranger, and you understand that you have been wrong all the falling years about what the poor have to give, that it is not nothing, that it was never nothing, that a person with one blanket and half a life left in her will divide the blanket in the dark for a woman whose name she does not know, and ask nothing, and never speak of it, and that this dividing is the truest wealth you have ever lain inside. The third mercy is the hardest and the largest, and it has no shape you can hold in your hands at all. It is the up-patient, the one who empties the lockers in the morning, the one whose unwatched gentleness you marked in the deep of the night. She passes your bed on some quiet errand in the thinning dark, and she sees, as she passes, that your hand has fallen open on the blanket, and that there is a small gray thing in it, a child's mitten, worn, with a dropped stitch near the thumb. She knows what it is. Of course she knows. She has emptied 100 lockers,
She has lifted 100 such small, worthless, priceless things out into her apron and carried them away. And she knows better than anyone living that a thing like that in a hand like yours is a child, is a grief, is the whole of a woman's heart worn down to a single object she cannot put down. And she does the thing that is the third mercy, the thing you will carry out of this ward if you carry nothing else. She stops, and she takes the corner of your blanket, and she draws it up a little, not over the mitten, never over it, but around your open hand and the small gray thing in it both, tucking the two of them together, the hand and the mitten, the mother and the last of the child, so that they are warm, so that they are covered, so that whatever the morning holds, the night, at least, will not let them be cold. And then she moves on, to the lockers, to the dead, to the unpaid, unwitnessed work that waits for her in the gray.
You lie very still, and the thing that breaks in you is not grief. You have spent the night's grief already, at the curtain, at the reveal, behind the shut door. The thing that breaks in you is something with no name, something on the far side of grief, the thing a person feels when, at the very bottom of the falling, with everything taken, a stranger covers your open hand and your dead boy's mitten with a corner of blanket and asks nothing and says nothing and walks on. It is too large to be called kindness. Kindness is the cup and the blanket. This is the other thing, the thing kindness points at, that even here, even at the gate of the last house, in the parish's careful keeping, numbered and washed and waiting, a person is not beyond the reach of being tended. That someone you will never know will see the open hand and the small gray grief in it, and decide, for no wage and no witness, that it should be warm. You did not think the world had that left in it for you. You had stopped looking for it years ago in the gray rooms, when looking for it only cost you more, and it found you anyway, in the dark, in the thinned old hour, in the form of a tired woman tucking a blanket around a mitten. 3 small mercies. A cup of water lifted to your mouth by a hand under your head. Half a blanket from a body as poor as your own. A corner drawn warm around your open hand and the last of your boy. Not one of them worth a farthing. Not one of them written in any book, recorded in any ledger, counted in any account of what the parish spent that night to keep its deserving poor alive. They will leave no trace. Tomorrow the nurse will not remember the cup, and the young one will not speak of the blanket, and the up-patient will empty your locker, perhaps, with the same unwitnessed care she gives them all. The mercies will vanish as completely as the 4 dark hours of the city vanish from the record, done and gone, and kept nowhere but in the one place that holds such things, which is the heart of the person they were done to, lying awake in the dark long enough to know she has been, against all the rules and all the falling, tended. And you understand, holding them loosely, the way you now hold everything, that this is what the night had left to give you, under the fear and the grief and the long cold fall. Not a rescue. There is no rescue. The morning will be what it will be. But mercy, small and silent and given sideways in the dark by people with almost nothing to a woman with nothing at all. The cup, the blanket, the covered hand, 3 small things. They are, you think, as the warm dark folds you closer and the breathing tide carries you on toward whatever the gray holds.
They are enough. Not enough to save you. Nothing here saves anyone. But enough to be warm by. Enough to not be alone by. Enough in the deep old hour before the dawn to hold loosely in an open hand beside a small gray mitten while the ward breathes around you and the lamp burns low and the keys go far off and nearer and far off again. You belong tonight to no one. And so tonight you belong to all of them.
The gray comes at last. Not light, not yet. Only the first thinning of the black in the high windows, the night admitting it has a far edge after all. And with the gray comes the early round, the nurse moving down the long room with her book, and you hear her stop at each bed and ask the one question the ward asks at the turning of the night, the question that sorts the breathing from the still. She says a name, low, and waits to hear it answered. You have been a number all night. You understand that now, lying in the thinning dark. At the gate they wrote you in a book and tied a card to the iron foot of your bed, and from that moment you were a case, a bed, a deserving object the parish was keeping. Not Martha, not the woman who scrubbed a tall house in a good street, not the mother of a boy whose mitten you hold, only a number in the careful keeping of the rules. The night took your name the way it took your sight. You let it. You were too tired to be anyone. And now the nurse is at your bed, and she looks at the card, at the number, and then, because some nurses do this in the gray at the early round, though no rule requires it, she does not read the number. She reads the name. She says it aloud, low, into the thinned dark, the name they wrote at the gate and have not spoken since. Martha. She says your name. And something turns. It is a small thing. It is the smallest thing. A tired woman in the gray reads a name off a card instead of a number, the way she might any morning, meaning nothing large by it. But you have not heard your own name in a human mouth since the gate, and before the gate not for a long time, because the gray rooms do not use your name either. The falling takes your name as surely as the parish does. And so to hear it now, Martha, spoken gently into the dark by a stranger who is only doing the round, is to be handed back for a moment the thing the whole night took. You are not a number. You are not a case. You are Martha. Someone said so. Someone, in the keeping of the cruel kind rules, looked at the card and chose the name over the number and gave you back yourself in a single word in the gray. And here is the reversal, the turn the whole night has been bending toward. You answer. You did not think you would. Some part of you, far down in the deepest hour, had thought you might simply not answer, that you might let the gray come and the round pass and your name go unanswered and be the still one this time, the made-up empty bed the next new woman is told not to mind. You had held that thought all night without looking at it directly, the way you held the door shut, the way you held the mitten, to not answer. To let the night carry you out the far door with Sarah and the whistling woman, quietly, no trouble to anyone, the falling finished at last. But your name is in the air, Martha, and under the warmth of a stranger's half-blanket, with your open hand and your boy's mitten tucked warm in a corner, some tired woman drew around them for no wage and no witness. With the cup of water still cool somewhere inside you, and the breathing tide of the long room rising and falling around you, you find that you do not want to be the still one, not tonight. The night gave you 3 small mercies and a name back, and a woman who has been given that much, even that little, even only that, finds she has, against all reason, somewhere near the worn bottom of herself,
the smallest unspent wish to stay.
So you answer. You make the sound. It is barely a sound, a breath with your name's shape pressed into it, yes, or only hear the word the living give at the early round to say the night did not take them. And the nurse hears it. She makes a small mark in her book, the mark that means still breathing, still here, still Martha, and moves on to the next bed, the next name, the next sorting of the still from the breathing. She will not remember it. To her it was nothing, a name read, an answer heard, a mark made, 100 such this grey morning. She does not know that she handed a falling woman back her own name in the dark, and that the woman, hearing it, chose to answer, chose the near door, chose for one more grey morning, for whatever it is worth, to stay. You hold the mitten. You will always hold the mitten. The boy is not given back by your name being spoken. Nothing gives the boy back, and the door in you stays shut, and the cold stays under it. But you are Martha again, in the grey, and Martha is the woman who knit that mitten, who scrubbed the white step, who held the door shut for years, who answered to her own name at the early round when she might have let it pass. The number could not have answered. The number had nothing to stay for. But Martha has a name now, given back by a stranger, and a name is a thing you can carry out of a ward, the one piece of property the falling could not finally take, returned to her in the last hour by a nurse who will never know she returned it. The grey thickens toward light in the high windows. The long room breathes. The keys go far off and nearer. And you lie in your bed, warm under a poor woman's blanket, your name spoken and answered, your hand and your boy's mitten tucked into a borrowed corner of warmth. Not saved, not rescued, the morning still only the morning, but here, still here. Martha, who scrubbed and lost and fell and held on and was given a cup and a blanket and a covered hand and her own name back in the dark, and who answered, yes, here, when the grey came and the round asked. You belong tonight to no one, and so tonight you belong to all of them. And in the morning you will belong again to yourself, to Martha, which is, after such a night, after such a falling, the largest mercy of them all. The grey becomes morning. The ward wakes around you, and you let it, and we leave you there. Martha, who answered to her own name, warm under a poor woman's blanket, still here. But the small grey mitten goes on. Step forward now, out of that morning, across all the years between, past the closing of the old charity, past the pulling down of the long room, past every winter that buried that night deeper under the ones that followed, until you come to a quiet building by a London road where the city keeps the things it did not throw away, the London Metropolitan Archives, a reading room, low lit, hushed in a way the ward would know, and in a grey box on a grey shelf among the admission registers of a hospital that no longer stands, there is a small worn mitten with a dropped stitch near the thumb and a card beside it, written in a careful modern hand. No one knows whose it was. The card does not say Martha. Her name was a number in a book, and the book recorded the case and not the heart. It says only, child's mitten, found among admitted patients' effects, date unknown. That is all the record holds,
The night, the cup, the half blanket, the covered hand, the name read gently in the gray, none of it is written anywhere. It happened in the 4 dark hours the city never wrote down, and it vanished the way those hours vanish, completely. And yet here is the mitten, kept, catalogued, held under a low light by people who will never know the night it came from, only that it mattered to someone enough to be carried to the end, and so they carry it further, 150 years further, into a record that finally has room for it. The night left no record. The mitten is the record. And if you have come this far, still listening, drifting now at the soft edge of sleep, let it be the last thing you hold as she held it, small and worn and warm and kept. Good night.